and I are kind of similar. You may even be more good-hearted than me. I feel like you, well.
But in our longing hearts, we're all the same.
Mutual respect and
Yes.
a boundary might have been crossed that you, right? So just an example of, it is a great example. I appreciate that for giving me the example to even work with.
Let's be the change we want to see.
I've never seen differences negative. I've always been attracted to and intrigued by it. But we're looking for, how are we similar? How are we the same? How can we all just get along?
We are links in a chain. Unimportant.
Yes, sir.
Hey!
What's up, everyone? Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you're tuning in from. This is Working It Out Across Generations. I'm one of your co-hosts, Justin.
And I am Dr. Lynne.
And I think we have a very interesting topic for today. Well, first, here we talk all things conflict, big and small, and how they add up into how we function as society, right? And so I think even with our conflict resolution background, right, we try to offer some resources, perspectives, tools for reconciliation in the future. And I think we have a very interesting topic for today, especially considering in the United States, there are just a plethora of feelings that are floating around, this big space and soil that we all share. And I think that flipping the script on grief is actually a very, very timely topic. And I think that we have a very, very special guest for you who's going to actually help us do that in a very, very effective way. And so I'm actually going to toss it to Dr. Lynne to introduce us into, our topic and what we're doing today.
Oh, thank you. Listen, to be honest, transparent, we knew, given the election in the United States, we knew that next day was going to need to be a topic that could really feed people and serve people. And we thought, hey, we did a segment on grief in a very different way earlier on, but that was two families that shared a grief of the loss of a husband and a father and the similarities between that and what came up. But we really want to bring on someone who can help all of us look at grief in probably a very different way than we've been looking at it, and be able to use it in a way that actually can move us forward in a healthier and more productive way. And today certainly seems to be the day, because there are so many of us in the United States who are grieving. But let's face it, globally, so many are grieving as well for a whole lot of different reasons. So without further ado, I want to bring on Monet Farr. And Monet is a certified grief recovery specialist and life coach who helps individuals and organizations navigate challenging life transitions such as loss, divorce, and health setbacks, drawing from her own experiences of profound personal loss. Monet uses the grief recovery method to guide clients in reframing grief and finding healthy paths to recovery. She has worked with major corporate clients like Macy's and CDC, and has been featured in O Magazine. Based near Atlanta, Georgia, Monet combines her compassion and expertise to create impactful workshops and sessions, empowering clients to rebuild and move forward with purpose and resilience. I love that bio. I love this woman. She is really out there, not just doing her thing, but helping so many people. Welcome to the show, Monet Farr.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here today.
It's good to see you.
I am, given everything that's going on, I'm getting as excited as I can, right?
Yep.
Yes,
Yep.
Absolutely. And we are with you. I feel like we are almost doing this in real time, like really, and we're talking about grief. I guess we are. It's not even an almost. We are doing this in real time. And so it's going to be helpful to all of us to have this conversation with you. I do want to tell you all up front that Monet's offering a complimentary Heal Your Heart 30-day challenge to inspire you and reignite your journey to healing. You'll receive 30 days of journal prompts and inspiration to explore pathways to deeper self-awareness, clarity, and peace. And did I mention complimentary? So,
Yep.
hey, we all could use this. So please
sign up right there. Yeah.
Yeah,
Links right
sign
there.
up. And we will bring it back again in case anybody missed it. But right now, we want to jump right in to this important conversation. So, Monet, what do you want our audience to know about you and what you do?
The biggest message I have is that we all grieve. And it's interesting because when I go out and I meet people and I tell them I'm a grief recovery specialist, they're like, oh, death, sorry.
Right.
I'm like, yeah, but no.
Right.
It's so much bigger than that because we grieve so many things in life, but unfortunately, we're not given that type of information. And so we don't see it as grieving. We just see it as, well, I'm just feeling bad and I'm just feeling sad and I got to keep it going. I don't have time for this. I don't have time. But what happens is a lot of times because we don't realize we're grieving and we don't realize that we actually have to process it and work through it, we just pile it on, right? So you get a death of a loved one, divorce, loss of career, empty nesting, so many things that we experience and grieve. And you just pack on that backpack, right? And one day it gets full of rocks that just get you stuck.
Yeah.
And so my biggest message is to let people know that we all are grieving at different parts in our lives. And we want to be able to take that time, process that grief. And it's okay. It's okay to feel all the feels around the grief that you're feeling. It's not a deep, dark hole that you'll never come out of.
Right.
There is a process that you can go through to actually heal your heart, release the pain, and then be able to move forward, right? Because you're a new person after grief. You're a new person. So decide, okay, how do I want to move forward now?
Yeah.
And be intentional about that.
Wow. That's so big. You're a new person after grief. And I know it from experience, but just to hear it, I think is so important. And I have to say that it's really through my conversations with you around your work that I realized that grief was more than death as well. I thought it was just you lose someone you love. Yeah.
And unfortunately, we have, this 5 stages of grief out there that, Dr. Kubler-Ross had the best of intentions when she put it out there, but it was for terminally ill patients. It wasn't for grievers. So a lot of times, even as we're grieving, we feel like we're supposed to go through these different stages of grief, and grief is not linear. And there is no right or wrong way to grieve.
Right.
And so you may not feel any of those emotions tied to the 5 stages of grief that are laid out, or you might experience them in a very different way and over a period of time, so all of our grief journeys are very unique and different because all of our relationships are very unique and different.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and it ties into my next question, which you've already started to touch up a little bit on, right? But if you could expand more, that'd be great. Just tell us some of the biggest misconceptions that people have when it comes to grief. I know that, one of those things, right, is that grief's not a linear, process, right? It's can come up at different times of your life and to different degrees. And, honestly, I think for me, that's where life throws your biggest curveballs, right? In the midst of grief, right? However, what would you say are some of the biggest misconceptions that, all of us have when it comes to our approach to grief?
Yeah. So one of the biggest ones is the one I just talked about, that it's not linear. But another one is that, a lot of times we feel like time will heal. And it's not time alone that heals us. It's time and work, right? We have to do the work to really heal our hearts. And then over time, yes, we can release the pain, but time alone isn't going to heal us. And there is no time frame to put on your grief because, those of us who have experienced it, we know that it can be 10 years later and
That's right.
something hits your heart in a way that, oh my God, where did this come?
Mhm.
Why am I feeling so heavy today? And so, it's just, we can't put grief in a box. We can't
Yeah.
Yeah.
put grief in a box. And we have to give all of ourselves permission to grieve however it is that we need to in order to heal.
Yeah. You said time and work. And I want to say to y'all, she's not saying time and get yourself back to work. Right.
Yeah.
Because I know I experienced that of, look, when are you coming back? Because there's work to do. And you're talking about doing the work on really grieving properly and feeling those emotions. And then the other thing I want to say, I know for some of you, because remember, this is called flipping the script on grief. For some of you to hear that those 5 stages weren't necessarily meant for grieving in this way. Some of you that's like, hey, wait a minute, she just told me, I remember when my mom and dad told me Santa Claus didn't exist because everybody's like, did you go through the stages?
I know.
And you got these 5 stages, and I'm not trying to disrespect,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Who was it? Elizabeth Kubler-Ross.
Kubler-Ross.
Kubler-Ross. I'm not trying to disrespect her.
Mhm.
I'm just trying to say that we all were taught about this and told about this, and now you're bringing something different into the work and the process for us to really think about and understand and grow with.
Yeah, yeah. And you said something about work, and that's something else that as a society we really need to look at, because the bereavement policies out there for
Yes.
grievers is really very it's damaging to a lot of people to have to come back. And it's not only damaging to us as individuals, it's damaging to the company too.
Yeah.
And so companies can lose over $75 million a year in just, not handling grief in an
Wow.
effective way. Yeah. Actually, I think it's billion. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of money, and it's a cost
Mm-hmm.
that I don't even think that they look into. I can tell you that I checked in on a lot of people today, here in the United States, and there were many people who said, I need a mental health day today.
Mm-hmm.
I gotta grieve this, and I can't even take it.
Yeah.
Right? I can't
Yeah.
call in and say, hey,
Mm-hmm.
I gotta go. And then those of us in the helping profession,
Mm-hmm.
especially, are like, how do I help other people today
Mm-hmm.
when I need help?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And companies do not really understand that, especially because grief is beyond just losing a loved one. If you're
Mm-hmm.
grieving all these other things, then you may just need a day. Heck, you might need a week.
Yeah. Yeah. Because are you really present? If you do go into work and you're not really ready to, are you really present? Are you really going to make some good decisions
Yeah.
around work? I don't think so,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So great. I think this actually ties into our next question, right? Would you say that we're all experiencing some form of grief? Do you think there's a definition for it? And while that's a bit of a longer one, I'm going to mix this in with a question that comes from one of our regulars who comes to our show. Shout out Mike.
Yeah, Mike.
But he's asking, is it okay if someone doesn't grieve? What are the ups and downsides? So it's kind of a longer one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Are we all experiencing some form of grief? If you had to define it, how would you, Monet, define it? And then if you could tackle a little bit of this, the pros and cons of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know it's a bit much, but I know
No, it's okay.
you can take
It's what
it.
I do. It's what
Yeah,
I
what you do. You break it. I'm not gonna say what you do. You break it, take it. So I'm gonna throw it at you. Go ahead, please.
Okay, so let me give you my definitions for grief. So grief, I have 2. So one is it's the normal and natural reaction to change or loss of any kind, right?
Okay.
It's also the conflicting feelings caused by the end of or change in a familiar pattern or behavior. Given that definition, you are grieving whether you acknowledge it or not, because it is your reaction to the thing. So you're going to have a reaction, whatever that is, and any emotion is okay. If you're not feeling like deep sad and heavy, that's okay. But if you are, that's okay too. All of our emotions around our grieving process are okay. But what's important, I feel, is that you give it some space. You give all of your emotions some space. Acknowledge those emotions. Feel what you're feeling, because then you can do something about it.
Yeah.
You know?
And so is it that you're not grieving, or you're not feeling what people tell you can expect to feel or should expect to feel? Or...
Yeah, I think it's a combination, because I think we get caught up in what we think we're supposed to feel if we're grieving.
Okay.
So if you're caught up in that conversation, you're like, well, I'm not feeling any of those things. I must not be grieving, right? But it's also then acknowledging, well, I had this loss and I'm having some kind of reaction to it.
Right.
Let me look into that. Let me dive a little deeper and see what are some feelings that are coming up if I think about this loss that I've just experienced. You know, divorce, for example. You know, we're not necessarily grieving the marriage. We might just be grieving all the things that came with the marriage. I had a partner, you know, we were planning life together. You know, we raised our children together. You know, though there are other things that you're grieving, and they will bring up different emotions.
Yeah.
But it's just important to really just acknowledge the loss,
right,
and see what comes up for you. You are having a reaction, some kind of reaction.
Right.
I think that's real, and I think the asking yourself the questions, right? The investigation, honestly, of yourself is so important, because we've said it before on this show, right? There's over 300 emotions that exist out there, and we're only versed as a people in about 15 of them.
Right.
Yeah.
So when you really think about even just all of the umbrella terms under anger, right? All of the umbrella terms under just nervousness, right?
Yes.
All of these natural reactions, right? But there's just so much more to it when you start to ask yourself those questions and allow yourself to go into, honestly, those uncharted territories, right? That's the most, fearful thing, anyone can do, right? And I think that, there is, learning in that. There's lessons in that. There is enlightenment in going into the darkness. So I think that's really, really cool.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, and what I do is I give my clients an emotional word wheel, because I want them to have the vocabulary to start really thinking about what it is that they feel, because maybe it's not anger, but when, like you said, Justin, if you go into that wheel of all the other things associated with what we normally think of anger, oh, that's really what I feel,
Right.
I feel rejected, or, whatever it is,
Right.
Oh, now I'm getting to it. And they start to use the vocabulary. It's the most beautiful thing I can see when I start seeing them really digging deep, especially because a lot of my clients come in very intellectualizing grief. Okay. And grief isn't intellectual, it's a heart thing. It's a heart thing, and it's heart work. So you can't do that work all up here. So what helps them is those emotion wheels, lets them see, oh, that's what I'm feeling, right? I'm reading this, so I'm appeasing the intellectual side, but hey, this is what I'm feeling, and it's just a beautiful thing to
That's awesome.
Yeah. And I would say also that sometimes we don't recognize that we're feeling something. Like we have to investigate our actions. And I'll give myself an example. Just these past couple of months around this election, I would have to catch myself like, why are you eating this chocolate, girl? Like, why are you just killing this bag of chocolate? Oh, I'm feeling something, but I'm really not in touch with the fact that I'm feeling something, because I'm doing my regular thing of kind of drowning out the emotion before I can even recognize that's an emotion is coming up. And some of us have, you know, it might be shopping, it could be a whole host of things. So it's not just the feeling, because sometimes we're not in touch, but also like the action. Is that right?
Yeah, no, it's true. It's true. And it's, you know, so I have what I call an emotional gut check that, you know,
Okay.
I challenge my clients and anyone that, you know, follows me to do. And it's like in the morning you wake up, because what I think we should do is get used to emotions and identifying them and figuring out where we are, where we lay. So in
Right.
the morning, if you wake up and you say, okay, how am I feeling? You know, just do a scan. It's like, wow, I'm feeling a little, you know, insecure, feeling a little insecure today.
Yeah.
And
Mm.
so the next step is, well, why am I feeling that way? What happened? Did something happen? Did I have a
Yeah.
conversation? Did I see something? Oh, I had a conversation with my girlfriend who's, you know,
Hmm.
killing it in her relationship.
Right.
You know, it's like, oh, so I'm feeling a little insecure. So then you say, you know, so are there any beliefs around that feeling, that emotion? Are there some beliefs attached to it? Like,
Right.
I'm not good enough, or, you know, whatever it is. We have a lot of different beliefs. So you just start to investigate the belief. And then it's like, is that true? Is that belief true?
Mm.
You know, is it true? And then you just have to do some work around it. But at least if you've given yourself that information, you can now say, okay, what am I going to do about it?
Right.
So now you get to take some action. You know, you're empowered now. The
Mhm.
feeling isn't taking over you.
Mm.
You're now taking over the feeling. I have some autonomy around. I can do something about this. I have power over
Mm.
my actions. I might not have power over how I feel or how I react to something
Right.
emotionally. I have every power about what I do about it.
Wow. I love that. I hope y'all are getting this. Uh, the next question is coming from another regular,
Mhm.
Melissa. Is the comforting side to grief from another person empathy or something else?
It really, you know, okay.
Hmm.
That's such a
Oh, sorry.
loaded question for me, but I'm gonna I'm gonna work on it. Okay.
Okay.
You're
All
good. And
right.
that
Yeah.
reaction, that reaction was not to you. It was to my mom, who's not the young person here, touching on the technological stuff,
Oh, okay.
overstimulating me for 30 seconds. So please go ahead. Stop touching stuff. Go ahead.
And he says this every week
Every
because I'm
week,
always
stop touching stuff. Go
Yeah.
ahead, please.
So I think people who are trying to comfort us are it's coming from a place of a good place. They care
Right.
about us and they don't want to see us hurting.
Right.
Unfortunately, sometimes we're re-injured, sorry,
Yeah.
by the people around us. And it's like I said, it's hardly ever intentional. I'll just say that,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
But it depends on where they're coming from. What is their experience? So if I'm not used to really dealing with negative emotions and you know, I just want to keep things light, and well, I'm not going to really be able to handle you being that sad.
Mhm.
So like, how you feeling today? You still say, okay, you know,
Right.
and I told a story. My girl and I love my friends. I have the best friends in this world. Like they love me like a sister. I know that for sure. But sometimes they would call and they'd be like, "How you feeling?" I'm like, "He's still dead." Yeah, I'm still sad.
Right.
You know, I'm still sad. I'm still sad. And so I got tired though of saying
Yeah.
I'm still sad. So I started saying,
Yeah.
"I'm fine. I'm good. I'm good." You know, I
I'm
just
good.
started
Yeah.
lying.
Yeah.
So, you know, the best intentions of those people who are trying to comfort us, sometimes it is just, you know, they are feeling some compassion and they really want to help. But
Right.
sometimes it's also coming from what they're comfortable with.
Yeah.
So we have to let that go as the grievers. I'm
Yeah.
sorry if you can't handle my deep,
Mm.
dark sadness, but it
Right.
is what it is. And
Right.
I'm not going to lie. I'm not
Yeah.
going to lie to you. I
Yeah.
Yeah.
feel
Mm.
sad. And it's
That's huge.
been 3 months. Yes, it's been 3 months and I'm still sad. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So,
Right.
you know, I think as people that want to support a griever, I think we really have to start changing the way we interact with a griever and let them kind of dictate what it is that they need. You know, and then
Mhm.
sometimes and the other thing I don't care if you lost your mom and I lost my mom.
Oh gosh. Oh
Don't
gosh.
say I
Yeah.
know how you feel, because you
Yeah.
don't. Because
Yeah.
like I said earlier, all of our relationships are unique. It's
Mm-hmm.
unique. So all you can say really is, I know how I felt when I lost my mom. I
Mm-hmm.
felt
Mm.
so devastated,
That's such a
and
good.
that is real. And
Right.
the griever can connect with you on that.
Yes.
Even if they don't feel the same way, they can empathize with how you felt, but don't tell me
Right.
how I felt or that you
Right.
know,
Right. You
Yeah.
right?
know.
I think
Right.
that's real
Right.
because
Wow.
I so unfortunately have experienced more of the first way you phrased it, right? And the getting it wrong, which absolutely I don't think at all it's intentional and things of that nature. However, there are a couple of relationships that I had to step away from and step back from, even just when it came to, you know, right, the dictating of what I needed in that moment. There was a time we
Mhm.
were out with some friends for a moment, and I really needed a second to separate and, feel what I needed to feel, right, and get back
Mhm.
out there. And this was someone who came to me, right, to try to offer support, and it
Mm-hmm.
ended up somehow kind of like I'm killing the vibe or I'm ruining the
Right.
fun or
Oh.
whatever, right? And
Mhm.
I also love that you named, even if you've experienced a similar loss too, because this is someone who hadn't. So it
Right.
was
Mhm.
quick for me to say, well, you don't get it, right? And even then, you just added, I think, another layer for me of, even for the people who do, it's,
Mhm.
well, you're still not exempt from giving me this moment for honoring my relationship, and my uniqueness to this dynamic. And so
Yeah.
I thought that was so
Mm.
how you phrased it, like what I needed more of. However, we also, are people, and we're going to re-injure. We're going to open up old wounds, unfortunately, in
Mm.
others, and it's up to us what we do with that. And I know that I have no bad blood for the kid or anything like that. I also know, like you said, I'm not going to lie about where I'm at. Like, brother,
Mhm.
it's not always going to be, let's go out, let's do this, let's do that. It might just be like, let's stay in, or let's not hang out at all. Like, if
Right.
that's what I need,
Mm-hmm.
having
Mhm.
gone through this shift, right? We're talking about the shift of, even just the shift of life, the shift of dynamics, the shift of whatever, right?
Mhm.
That in itself is a process in which we have to give grace. I think a lot
Yeah.
more grace for just the stuff that comes up. We're not supposed to be out here hurting people intentionally, but it's an inevitable part of the process. And so just
Mhm.
having more naming around that conversation, and you doing that, is helping me even with my individual grief right now. So I so
Mhm.
appreciate that.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
wanted I want to ask you twofold of the same thing, really. One is, so when they call and they're saying, how you doing? What could you say, give them to say differently than that? Because I've made that mistake myself. I
Mhm.
know. Yes.
Yeah. Um, I mean, how you're feeling is fine, right? That's fine.
Mhm.
You're just asking the question. Um, but it's also around sharing that you really don't know what to say.
Ah, there it is. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I'm calling and I'm checking on you because I really care about how you feel,
Hmm.
and I'm asking how you're feeling, but maybe that's not what you need to hear.
Hmm.
But, how can I help?
Yeah. I love that.
How can I be there for you?
Yeah.
Is really more of the question.
Yeah, I love that.
Mhm.
Hope
Mhm.
everybody heard that and are taking that. So, building on that, what are
Mhm.
some tools or resources that you work with that you can share with us today?
Um, what that the gut check is a big one,
Uh-huh.
right? Because that at least helps us start to identify our emotions, whether you're grieving or not, right? But then, I do have a 6-week program that I help people actually process the grief, because a lot of times it's around relearning grief,
Right.
and how we deal with it, and not only how we deal with it and how we can process it better, but it's also around supporting other people, because now we have a better understanding of it. And so, some of the resources are, just being able to, like I said, talk about your emotions, identify what your emotions are. What is it that you're feeling? Emotional honesty is such a huge piece of this work that I do, and then also being able to take action based on how it is that you're feeling. You know, like I said, time will pass, but what are you doing to now process your grief? And
Yeah.
you know, and so it's really about, you know, you can journal. That's why I have the journal prompts, is because I think when we journal, we're able to start, you know, just start thinking about how it is that we're feeling and write it out. And then, you know, like I said, then as you're coming to terms with what you're feeling, then you can decide, okay, now what kind of actions can I take? You know, how can I go forward? And so, you know, and some of the things that we go forward with are identifying what are the things that bring you some peace in that moment. For me, it's being out in nature. A good walk is therapy for me. So it's finding those things that can bring you peace. And it's also around honoring the relationship, the person, the experience, whatever it is that you're grieving. Because, you know, we grieve as empty nesters, even, right?
That's right.
It's finding ways to honor the loss, you know, on special occasions, special days, or just in the moment, right? How do I honor this space that I'm not feeling? I'm, you know, I'm an empty nester now. Well, I'm honoring by traveling.
Yeah. Yep.
I got some more travel. I'm a travel, you know, but finding the ways to
Yeah.
honor the
Yeah.
grief. But it's so much around that the emotional honesty has to come first, or
Yeah.
you won't know how to start finding the things that can bring you some peace and allow you to work through that pain.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You
And
know,
and let me say this too. Just know the depth of your pain is just a reflection of the love that you had for the thing, the person, the, you know,
right.
whatever, the career, you know, whatever, right? It's really an indication of the deep love that was there. So that's something to honor too, right?
Yeah.
Wow, I loved him that much that I
Yeah.
am in this dark, deep hole,
Right.
you know?
Right.
But I
Yeah.
loved that deeply. What a
Yes.
blessing, you know?
Yes, yes, and you know, I've done the 6 week with you, and anybody, I highly, highly, highly recommend it. But one of the things I can remember in your own personal grief, and I should share that Monet is my cousin. She's my first cousin, and not just a first cousin. She's more like a sister to me, and so we've experienced a
Mhm.
lot of loss together in our family and just in life moments. But one of the things that you had said at one point when you had your own personal loss of your life partner is that you really were yearning to talk to people who knew him the way that you knew him, so you could talk, you know, talk about those memories and smile and laugh, and you know, as a way of
Mhm.
processing grief. And I have to say that I found growing up that that's not what people wanted to do. And if I tried to do that, I remember trying to do that with my mother, and then it would reduce me to tears, but I didn't feel that it was a bad thing. But other people were like, oh no, don't let her cry. Like, let's change the subject.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I think that that's an important one for people too, to really be able to share in the memories and talk about them with other people.
Mhm.
So it kind of leads me to this question is, are people trying to get through the grief so that they can one day experience joy again? Or is your message that there can be joy even while you're grieving?
I'd say yes to both. I
Okay.
think that we are trying a lot of times because we don't have the tools and we don't know how to process grief. We're just trying to get on the other side of it. So let me just like let me get through this. Like
Yeah.
did
Yeah.
this happen? Like no, I'm just let me
Right.
just move on, keep it going. You know, I don't have time to grieve. I don't have time to grieve this relationship. I don't have time to grieve this death. I don't have, you know, I don't have time. So we a lot of times we are because we don't know how to actually process it and go through it, we are you know, just trying to get to the other side of it. Also, there there can be some joy in grief, and there might not be any
Mm,
joy in grief. You know, like
right.
everyone's journey is so different that I might not be able to find any joy in that grief. I know I've dealt with, a young woman who, she lost her child. Like
Right.
she didn't even get to give birth. And so for me to try to talk to her about some joy in that was not a conversation because she does not have any joy in that grief. And we don't ever, so a lot of times we go in to replace the loss, right? Oh, you can have other children, or thank God you were able to conceive. Like those don't do it. Don't do it.
Yeah.
You will
Yeah.
re-injure that person
Mhm.
because it minimizes their grief.
Yeah.
So we are all we're the only people that know whether there's some joy in the grief. And the only reason I got to the point where I could say, well, I love that deep. And I'm thankful for that. And that was some joy in it. It was my journey to feel that way at some point. And certainly not early on. And I did want to touch on something else you said, because that time together with being with people that also loved your loved one, those repasses, those are times when we are able, that's why they're so cathartic. And, a lot of ways is coming together as a community that loved this one person is huge.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't able to do that with my life partner. And as a result, so we have something called complicated grief.
Okay.
And that's around the things we didn't get to say or do,
Mhm.
the dreams and the expectations that we were never able to realize. And so having complicated grief is another step. It's like it makes it even harder. It makes the journey harder. And so that's why this 6-week program that I have works through that, because you're able to release that, where you're able to communicate it, you're able to identify it. What were the hopes and the dreams and the expectations I had? And how do I now communicate that in a way that I can let it go? Because otherwise you're just stuck with it. Imagine if I didn't have these tools and I was just stuck with the fact that his family, his children weren't able to just, embrace me in that moment, to let me share in the grief. Like, what if I couldn't let that go? I mean, that's the stuff that eats us up and makes it sick.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it would seem like it will be helpful for things like, oh my God, my graduation's coming up. They're not going to be here. They're not going to be here when I get married. They're not, right. Because you could go on and on and on about that kind of thing. And if you don't, it sounds like if you don't do the work, right, it becomes even more complicated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say I still struggle with that in some aspects myself, and yet there is if not comfort, just I feel more equipped in my further investigation and ongoing investigations of what I'm feeling and where I'm, where I go with those things, to just allow myself to, accept that while also not, as you said, trying to like change or replace it. You know what I mean? Like I know for me with certain people I've lost, it's like, well, I'm not going to get another one of those. So like, I don't even need to look for another one of them. Right. And I also don't need to be quite frank, like torture myself with the facts, realities, and inevitabilities of what it is. Right. Like some of these people really are just that real for us. Right. Even our pets. Right. Losing the loss of a pet, like, a dog in a formative year, right. A cat, in the formative time. What a lizard, it don't matter, right?
It's true.
It's just so a part of the process, and I think we're just normalizing grief a little differently right now, which is really really cool. We're all going through it in some way. I don't want to speak for you as the specialist in this, but I would say we're all feeling it in some way. It's just how much of it are you allowing yourself to feel?
Yeah.
And
And I would say, especially today. So there are intangible losses that we grieve. So we grieve loss of trust. We grieve
Yes.
loss of
Wow.
safety.
Yep.
We
Wow.
Yep.
grieve, loss of faith, right?
Yes.
And I think that
Absolutely.
that
Yeah.
would really speak to
Ooh.
some of the things we're feeling today. And
Yeah.
it's
Absolutely.
interesting because I know for me, that's why I said this love grief thing that goes on. I didn't really realize how much hopes and dreams I had about this country, or what I really
Mm-hmm.
believed about
Yeah.
this country. I thought I was already over it. But
Mm-hmm.
clearly from the amount of grief that I'm feeling today, I clearly had some hopes and dreams still tied up
Yeah.
in what this country could be.
Right.
And so when we deal with those intangible losses, it's even a little more challenging because there's definitely not a lot of conversation around that. But
Yeah.
it's still a loss that we're
Yeah.
grieving and that we should process
For sure.
and release the pain.
For
Yeah.
sure. I think I started out that way, or with those intangibles first, right? Around, you named it, trust.
Mhm.
Especially with, like, maybe like trust of authority, right?
Mhm.
Me being young and in school, thinking,
Mhm.
oh, every teacher or every administrator has my back, and
Yeah.
that showing up in a completely opposite way, right? And so
Mhm.
I think just speaking to my own experience, I think that, once the tangible losses came around, it was almost like an amplifier, right? Of like,
Mhm.
wow, like, really, even just sometimes, glorifying our parents, right?
Mhm.
I know that was
Mhm.
me. I thought my parents were God, right? And we're gonna be here forever, and nothing could happen to my parents, and they were superheroes, right? Lost my
Mhm.
dad 2020, and
Mhm.
then I'm like, okay, wait, we're all mortal. Like, no
Yeah.
one, we're all here.
Mhm.
This is real. I'm not dreaming. Like, this is life. And so,
Mhm.
I think I think you're naming so many things for people that they're feeling, and that, to be
Mhm.
quite frank, yes, it's unintentional, but because we don't have this forum in the masses to have this kind of conversation, this kind of hub, right, for people to look left and look right and see that they can have access to, I think that we're helping a lot more people than we even know right now. Because I'm one of those
Mhm.
people who's co-hosting this conversation, and yet I'm somehow, some way about to go do some work on this later. So, like,
Mhm.
you're really unlocking some cool stuff right now, and I really appreciate
Mhm.
your time so far. So,
Yeah.
yeah, thank
Yeah.
you.
She's
Mhm.
dropping gems, y'all. So I'm
Yeah,
glad y'all are tuning in. And if you tune in on the
for real.
replay,
Mhm.
it's a great way to spend your time, right?
Mhm.
Uh, so I want to ask one more thing and then give you the final word, and then we will tell people where about your offer again and where they can reach you. Uh,
Mhm.
I just think generationally, I'll say I don't think that we are really have been really raised to think about grief being something that we can really work through productively. Particularly, I'll speak from the African American experience because we get, I was getting ready to say dragged to church, but we get introduced to church, and we got the whole thing of God doesn't make mistakes. Like, a lot of things come from the spiritual perspective of things, platitudes, I'll call them, that people say to us around grief in relationship to religion. And that, I think, is difficult for us to bump up against. I'm wondering if any of that comes up in your work with your clients.
Yeah, definitely. Because it's one of those things that people say trying to comfort us that really re-injures us. Because I know when people said to me, well, he's in a better place, I'm like, yeah, no, here is the better place.
Mm,
So no, I don't agree with you.
mhm.
So it is one of the things that people say. But even when we're talking about spiritual, conversations conversations around spiritual topics, we're still intellectualizing grief
Mm,
because you're now trying to just make me feel better by saying these things, but my heart hurts.
mhm.
So what you're saying isn't helping my heart.
Yeah.
You're just trying to help me, like, you know, somehow, make it better in my mind. And
Ah,
so those things are not helpful because they're not heart conversations.
yes.
Because a heart conversation around spirituality is, maybe, and everyone's conversation is different, but the conversation might be more like, you know, you know, how are you feeling about your faith right now? I mean,
Yeah.
I know it must be difficult right now to feel like God's with you.
Mm,
And, but God is with us through
mm,
all of these times,
mhm,
and
mhm.
we can go to him in these dark times.
Yeah.
But to say he's in a better place, no,
Mhm.
that's not helpful.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
I love that.
I
It's
do
it's not
too.
helping my heart right now.
Mm,
I think we're all logical and or try to
Mhm.
be and go back to that place of problem solving, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes it really is just either sitting in it or feeding of the heart
Hmm.
that we need more of, and that we need to normalize more of, and honestly make it cool. Make that
Yeah.
cool again, right? So
Yeah.
I think
yeah.
that's
Because
all.
this is safe. Intellectualizing things is safe. You keep yourself safe. But when we
Mhm.
Yeah,
start talking about our heart,
Yeah.
it's not so safe.
no,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
Uncharted,
We're
a little bit of
vulnerable.
Uncharted,
We're
yeah.
more
Right.
vulnerable.
Hmm.
Yes, we
Yeah.
are.
Uncharted territory for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yes.
makes a lot of sense.
Mhm.
Yes.
Mhm.
So, this has been, I mean, we could use another hour because I can tell you that there's so much that you have
Mhm.
just graced us with. And just like when the bells go off, and so much of that has been happening for me. And we can tell from the
Mhm.
comments for the audience as well. So we want to ask you, what do you want to make sure you leave us with? What message or anything you want to say?
I think the biggest thing is around emotional honesty. I think that's just really the nucleus of what I want to leave with people, because if we can just be more emotionally in touch with what we're feeling,
Mhm.
that gives us so much more power. And we can make decisions from there, and we can decide how we're going to act, right? So we want to be more proactive,
Right.
and not just reactive,
Mhm.
because that's what causes harm in the world, I think, is when we're reactive.
Yeah.
But if we can just pause and take intentional steps towards healing, then that's much more, that's a healthier approach, I think.
Mhm.
But please know that my website is, newparadigmsgriefrecovery.com.
We're gonna share
And
your stuff.
yeah, and but really, I'm available. Like, I love having these
Mm.
conversations, and you don't have to sign up for a program to have a conversation with me. I'm really open to helping people in however I can, because I know that some of this is really new to people, that we're not really used to talking about grief in such a wide spectrum, right? It's
Right.
very pigeonholed, but it's so much wider than I think most of us would see. That I'm open to always having conversation, and I am planning to have a YouTube channel so that I can have more of these
Great.
Awesome.
conversations.
That's great.
So, you're just leaving that I'm available. And if you can just take one step towards more emotional honesty in your life, I think that will help you with any kind of grief that you encounter, because now it won't sneak up on you. You'll
Yeah.
realize, okay, yeah, I'm sad about that, or I'm feeling rejected, or I'm feeling, whatever it is you're feeling, right?
Yes. And please, if you're grieving this election, or please give yourself time to grieve. Be kind to yourself, especially today.
Mm-hmm.
And today, folks, is not the time for that old school. Okay, let's get that, to work. Tough it out. This is how it's always been. No, today, let us grieve and
Mm-hmm.
let us learn from Monet Farr how to do that in a better way. What a great conversation. Let's let people know about your offer again, a complimentary Heal Your Heart 30-day challenge to inspire you and reignite your journey to healing. You'll receive 30 days of journal prompts and inspiration to explore pathways to deeper self-awareness, clarity, and peace. Sign up, sign up, sign up. It's complimentary.
Yes, if you want to find Monet Farr Cole, you can catch her at Instagram at New Paradigms Grief Recovery, Facebook.com Posh Life Consulting, LinkedIn as well, Monet Farr Cole, and just throwing up that website again, as well as her email if you want to reach out for a sign up for a conversation. This is, family, so this is also my aunt. So shout out my aunt Monet. I can say, well, maybe you should have been better with your diction in describing how all of this went.
That was another cousin that did that.
No, maybe you should have corrected that. Maybe I'm grieving the loss of my aunt Monet. No, we'll get to that another time. However, please reach out. She is amazing. She is just a gift to any and everyone who encounters her. And if you want to catch some more of us, catch us at e360tv.com, Trajectory Channel, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Apple TV.
Watch us on the big screen. I did that the other day, and it was great.
Well, it's been my absolute pleasure being here with you guys. You guys are so delightful, and the conversation is always so engaging, and I really appreciate the conversation a lot.
Hey,
today and other days.
The pleasure's ours. Right. The pleasure's ours. You want to catch us on other days or today's Facebook, Working It Out TV show, Working It Out, Cross Generations on YouTube. Y'all, we're just here trying to have some conversations, trying to hold some space for things that we're all feeling and normalize some of those things and make this a part of our culture, if not more part of our culture. And, all it takes is, one step at a time, one conversation at a time. Yep. And as cousin Monet said, it's trying to trip me up over here. Just opening ourselves up, a little bit every day to more emotional honesty. Yeah, I think that's really a big thing that we're going to adopt and make sure we quote you on every time we say that. So, y'all, this was great. Working it out across generations. I'm Justin.
I am Dr. Lynne.
And you know what we say about conflict. Conflict is here to teach you something about yourself. So go out there and find out what that is. This was Working It Out across generations, and we'll see you next week.
Yes. Love you all. Yes. You and I are kind of similar. You may even be more good-hearted than me. I feel like you. Well,
but in our longing hearts, we're all the same.
Mutual respect and a boundary might have been crossed that you right. So just an example of it is a great example. I appreciate that for giving me the example to even work with.
Let's be the change we want to see.
I've never seen differences negative. I've always been attracted to and intrigued by it. But we're looking for how are we similar? How are we the same? How can we all just get along?